So this grandmother, true story, by the way, decided to do an advance request. She then gets lied down by her family to be euthanized. During the procedure, she came to and said, "Stop, no, I don't want this." And the family held her down and finished the procedure. We're not talking about compassion. We're talking about injecting your body with so much poison that it fights back, that we have to give you a paralytic.
I've always struggled with this issue. And like I said, even taking an animal and choosing a moment, that seems insane to me to have that power.
At least we use pentobarbital on our animals so they die immediately. And I think that they need a scapegoat to cut out a massive amount of the population that is a vulnerable part, which is your addicts, your homeless, your disabled, your veterans, your elderly. And they realize that they can save to the tune over $1 trillion by just providing compassion and care.
All right. Kelsi Sheren, as I said, you can follow her on Kelsi Sheren on X, Kelsi Sheren Perspective on YouTube. Kelsi, welcome. Thanks for being here. And introduce us to the friend you have with you.
This is my 3-week-old, and this is what happens when your spouse is a football player and the season starts. So we do podcasts like this.
What is going on with this MAiD phenomenon, so to speak? We have evidence of how Canada has we've spoken to people that have been offered medically assisted suicide that should physical therapy, essentially. And it has been sort of stunning how much the Canadian experience has run amok. Why in the world would we do it down here?
Oh, you're not. Why in the world would we do it? You're doing it. You're doing it in 14 jurisdictions, 13 states, and the 14th. And I think it's important to point that out, because the reality is Canada is your canary in the coal mine that nobody wants to pay attention to, but we're not the first to do it. We're just the ones to perfect it. I mean, take a look at the Netherlands. They're killing children with autism over there. Look at Belgium. Take a look at Spain with the Noelia Castillo case. I've been speaking with their family and talking with their lawyers. She was gang raped. I'm sorry, I'm used to YouTube. And, she took her own life, tried to take her own life, and then the government decided to euthanize her when she had a mental health disorder. So Canada is a problem. We are now about to hit our 100,000th murder, and we should stop calling it MAiD, because that's not at all an acronym that is accurate to what this is. It is lethal injection with a paralytic that is a poison that's put into your veins and ends your life. It's not a medical procedure. It doesn't help you. It ends your life. We kill you. And Canada has become, in the past 10 years, we've killed 100,000 people. That's not anything small. The numbers that you just put on the screen are just from last year alone, 16,499. And we are now almost the leading cause, 5.1%. Like you've got on the stats there. But the reason why I've been speaking so emphatically about this is because I currently qualify for MAiD in Canada. I am a combat veteran with a laundry list of ailments that, starting in March of 2027, they will euthanize you for. They will not provide you treatment, psychedelic assisted therapy, any actual meaningful support. They will offer you electroshock therapy like they did to myself and many other veterans that I know. And then they will offer you eugenics. And that is the issue years and years ago when another combat veteran friend of mine was offered when he asked for help for post-traumatic stress disorder. And since then, I've been on a tirade across the globe on every show possible, whether it's Jillian Michaels, Piers Morgan, Trigonometry. I have another one with them coming out this week where I have been screaming for the rooftops, trying to get America to understand what's really happening, because America is not just slow dripping. You guys have taken our playbook. You've partnered with people like Compassion and Choices that are worth $35 million. And then you've had the Rebranding group, which is people that work with the Bill Gates Foundation, BIPOC, you name it, they work with them, the Obama Foundation. And they're going around, and this is by honestly, their own words on YouTube and their own videos. You guys can watch it themselves. This is not conspiratorial at all. They are literally going around and targeting the states and saying that by 2028, over 50% of the American population will live in a state that'll euthanize you. And look, I hear you. I don't really want to hear the conversation about suicidal empathy here, because I live in the country that murders people for homelessness. So there is a slippery slope. It is not even in existence. And like my dear friend Michael Malice says, it's an elevator shaft. We don't actually provide compassion in therapies. If you've been anywhere in Canada, you know how impossibly difficult it is to get medical care, even though we have free medical care, if you want to call it that. We have over 23,000 people die on a wait list every year, and over 1 million people leave ERs every year. But hey, it's free, even though we pay for it. And now your tax dollars will go to euthanizing you. And here's the kicker, Dr. Drew, that most people just don't want to wrap their brain around. Not a single one of these drugs, not a single one of these poisons is designed for killing. Because last time we studied killing, it was during the Holocaust, and it's called eugenics. So now America is rolling this out as a healthcare alternative. And I have been speaking quietly with United States legislation. I've been working with the State Department to try to get in front of RFK and President Donald Trump to warn him, because if you guys do not actually wake up, these laws that are already in place and are rolling out this year and next year will make it so that anybody, almost anybody that can just make themselves ill enough or look ill enough, qualify to be killed and murdered by their doctor. And that's not even exaggerating at this point.
So the book is called "Do No Harm." Is the public health community pushing this? And I ask that question because I've only recently become aware that public health practitioners, so-called, have no mandate to do no harm. It's unbelievable that we put people in charge of large populations who have literally no mandate not to hurt you. It's uncanny. And so the kinds of concerns that they have, the things that they're weighing in terms of what's good for the population could easily include nice, no problem. You know, it saves X amount of dollars so we can do some more appendix repairs. Who is pushing this, and where have we gone wrong?
So right now in Canada, you have a group. I speak about these groups often. They absolutely hate me. After I went viral on Jordan Peterson, we slapped the hell out of their donation campaign, waking people up to what this actually was. You have Dying with Dignity. You have Compassion and Choices. You have sitting senators in, for example, you have Kathy Hochul, who just got this legalized in New York using a sob story. You even have a sitting governor in California. Are you ready for this? Who wrote about it in his own memoir, admitting to euthanizing and participating to euthanizing his mother in 2002, and that's Gavin Newsom. And he was never charged with murder, but yet willingly participated and admitted to it in his own memoir. It's been spoken about in the Washington Post. It's been spoken about in People magazine, not that anybody cares about them, but it's definitely been spoken about everywhere. And I don't know how a sitting governor is even allowed to have a conversation about this, but he even got it legalized in 2016. And so the thing that people don't pay attention to is how much money this saves. And right now there was a research paper done out of Canada that I spoke about on Jillian Michaels, and it went completely viral because Canada stands to save $1.273 trillion by providing in the next 20 years voluntary and non-voluntary euthanasia. And now that's not even a stretch for Canadians when you see that they've euthanized over 100,000 people who a lot of them don't qualify. The coroner reports, the Ontario coroner reports that have come out, the AMAD committee has come out and said that there have been non-compliant cases. There has been family members pushing individuals to get qualified to be euthanized. And these people are not dying. These people are not sick. So when people say, but Kelsi, Alzheimer's and dementia, I say, cool, are you good with lethal injection? Because that's the exact procedure minus the paralytic. And at least in Canada, we paralyze you so that when you drown to death in your own fluids, you can't scream.
So, yeah. So this is complicated because indeed the majority of health care dollars are spent in the last 6 months of life, typically in fruitless services, fruitless care. Yeah. That is a fact, right? So if we empower doctors medical legally not to do that, like in other words, if we feel a care is fruitless and family wants it, we can say, I'm sorry, I'm not going to do it. Now we're not in a position to do that. I'm freezing again. There we go. Can you hear me okay?
Yeah, I got you. But the problem that you have to understand, right, Dr. Drew, is there, you're a doctor. There is a thing called the double blind. It's hey, we're going to increase morphine, heart rate's going to go down. You have the conversation with the family members. That's not what we're doing here. Yeah. That's not what we're doing. We're scheduling this.
I know. So hold on. No, I get it. You are ending a life in a premeditated fashion, not sort of
Correct.
setting up a situation where you're keeping somebody comfortable come what may, which is really how we approach it today. But there's a lot here. So one is the real expense that is useless. Another is the real suffering that incurs as a result, right? The fruitless care, like you said, people they're drowning in their own secretions. It's horrific. And I have people all the time saying to me, my God, we would never do this to a dog, right? We at least allow dogs to end their life with dignity. And I have done that with dogs, and I've been really uncomfortable with it. Taking a moment to end a life, like we're going to do it right now, that's a weird thing with just packed with ethical problems. So we have a real thing of excess expense that could be dealt with differently. We have B, suffering that could be dealt with differently or avoided. And then we have the ethics of any of this all across it about ending a life. And then I guess a fourth layer would be the one you're talking about, is where it runs amok, where it just goes crazy because people are not paying attention to how serious a thing this is.
Well, I mean, so I am an absolutist. I served overseas in Afghanistan. I've taken enough lives now to know that ending life is never the solution or an option, regardless of suffering. The way that you devoid somebody of suffering, number one, is stop lying to them and saying that suffering is not going to be a part of the human existence. To experience all of human life is to go through the gamut of it, correct? Right? So we know that.
Not only that. Not only will there be suffering, we pretend that we should never have to do so in this country, but misery is inevitable, and misery might be good occasionally. A little bit of misery, a little bit of suffering builds character. But we're 100%. Talking about a different kind of suffering. But we're talking about suffering
But are we though? Because let me just put a case for you. No, let me just give me a chance here, right? Because this is something that I argue daily. I have this conversation with patients and people all the time who are like, Kelsi, but she's in and out of delusion. She cannot function. Well, let me throw a case at you that's really brilliant that illustrates my issues. Number one, if you can't seek a doctor, you can't get treatment, you can't get palliative care or hospice, should we then be murdering you? Or should we be putting funds into giving hospice and palliative care for proper end of life? Because here's what happens if you don't. You go to places like Denmark, like the grandmother that I talk about in my book, that's a very prominent story, who did this thing called advanced requests. Advanced requests are what Quebec are doing, are federally illegal, but are happening in the province of Quebec, but no one's shocked because they're killing the most people in the globe right now. So this grandmother, true story, by the way, decided to do an advanced request. And at a certain point, her dementia got so significant and so severe, which we now understand dementia, a lot of times, diabetes number 3, can be looked after early on in life. And there is a ton of different research around it. But we didn't have it at the time. So she goes into the doctor, and the doctor doesn't tell her what's going on, but she slips a sedative into her coffee. Right. During the time she drinks the coffee, she then gets lied down by her family to be euthanized. And during the procedure, she comes
Is that legal?
to... Oh, yeah.
Is that legal
According to them,
your country?
The doctor was not charged. Anyway, during the procedure, she came to and said, stop. No, I don't want this. And the family held her down and finished the procedure. We're not talking about compassion. We're talking about injecting your body with so much poison that it fights back, that we have to give you a paralytic. And Dr. Joel Zivit's research shows you, let me just finish, that when you do this procedure, your lungs fill with fluid, they go into a pulmonary edemic state, and you drown to death in your own fluid. So is it really compassion, or is it just murder by another name?
Right. So I guess the question would be, because I've always struggled with this issue. And like I said, even taking an animal and choosing a moment, that seems insane to me to have that power.
At least we use pentobarbital on our animals, so they die immediately.
But we use a bunch of things that we could use on humans. But again, I'm not at all comfortable with any of this. But what is there any room for this, or does it always go to run amok? Because of all the competing, distorted.
There's never room, right? We saw this. I hate to keep bringing it back to them, but we saw this in the 1800s, we saw it in the 30s and the 40s. It's when the difficult eaters, the women that were struggles, the children, the mentally ill. Now you have the College of Physicians in Quebec suggesting we should be euthanizing children 0 to 1 for spinal bifida and Down syndrome. So you cannot trust human beings. Human beings are flawed. Oh, you don't know about this?
No, it's awful.
Yeah.
I get so disappointed.
Yeah, the head of the college of physicians.
I get so disappointed when I hear about this stuff. Blah, awful.
It's disappointing in Canada, but what's more disappointing is the fact that when I sit down with the United States State Department years ago, and they said they had no clue it was already happening in their own country, and you have a sitting governor who willingly and admittedly participated in euthanizing his own mother when it was illegal, and somehow still hasn't been slapped with any sort of law.
Listen, remember Dr. Gevorkian? He went to prison for advocating for some of this in really in extreme situations, not for widespread use. And they took him to prison. And yet people are doing it now. Doesn't seem. I'd love to talk to the attorneys that prosecuted that case. How do they feel about this now? I mean, they seem very, very ethically mobilized by Dr. Gevorkian's position to the point that they felt he was a danger to the public.
Well, take a look at the Canadian.
These days.
Yeah, well, if you take a look at the Canadian law and you take a look at the people that have legalized, because they never legalized euthanasia, they just amended the criminal code so doctors can't be held accountable. Because the only words a doctor has to say in Canada are this: I was of the opinion that this individual qualified, and that's how you avoid jail time.
Do you think that some of the reason we could go down this path is that relativism in ethics and in the pursuit of truth and in logic has taken hold, where there's no such thing as what is true philosophically?
I think there's exactly. I think that's a big component of it. I think everything is currently crumbling in the country that I live to an extent that most people don't understand, because our media is banned and blocked, so you can't find out how bad it actually is. And I think that they need a scapegoat to cut out a massive amount of the population that is a vulnerable part, which is your addicts, your homeless, your disabled, your veterans, your elderly. And they realize that they can save to the tune over $1 trillion by just providing compassion and care. And I believe that the United States is not only on the same path, you guys are doing it in California, Colorado, and Delaware, Hawaii, Illinois, in Maine, Montana, New Jersey, New Mexico, New York, Washington, Oregon, Vermont. And the worst part is, Oregon and Vermont, you don't even have to live there. You can fly from any state you want on a one-way ticket and just be euthanized by a doctor there.
Wow. Well, the way you're describing it sounds very much, there's all this paranoia about Nazis these days. That was one of their first moves, was to unload people that were a burden and were old and were unfit and were and you used the word eugenic. I assume that's where you were equating it with that. All right. Listen, thank you for fighting the good fight. I am persuaded that humans are flawed and we can't trust them with this power. I think that's really the bottom line here.
Sorry.
And, I look forward. Well, I'm disappointed at where it's gone. And I will look forward to reading your book, Do No Harm.
Thank you so much for having me, guys. I really appreciate it. And thank you for tolerating the negativity that is this subject, but we have to do something about it before it's too late.
I like to talk about things that seem important, and this does certainly seem so. Thank you so much.
Thanks, guys.